Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the second edition of Kapihan session hosted by the FEU Department of International Studies. I am Keb, your moderator for today's event. Before anything else, allow me to read some of the reminders for this Kapihan. First, we are currently streaming live via the Facebook page of FEU and the International Studies Department. To our Facebook audience, if you have questions or comments, kindly type it in the comment section and we will course it through our speakers. Second, there will be an open forum right after the discussion. So if you have questions or concerns, kindly click the raise hand button or drop your message at the Zoom chat, indicating your name and to whom you are directing your concerns. To formally start the event, may we call in the chairperson of the Department of International Studies, Mr. Francis Esteban, for the opening remarks. Sir?
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon to our speakers and to our audience. Welcome back again here in our second edition of the Faculty Kapihan series of the International Studies Department. We are very pleased to have you all today. Today we'll be discussing an equally important topic that the world is experiencing right now, especially here in our region in Southeast Asia. As we see our fellow countries in Southeast Asia having this different social movements, this different rallies and different cohesions and movements happening all around them, we might want to ask what are the reasons behind these actions? What are the motivations behind these decisions, behind these actions done by the people, particularly in Indonesia and in Thailand? And specifically, how does it affect us here in the Philippines? Will it have a ripple effect, or will the Philippines learn from this kind of social movements? So to have a very vivid understanding of this, we choose to have this session today so that we can understand it fully and we can have a better grasp of what's happening around. So without further ado, I welcome everyone to this second Kapihan series of the International Studies Department. And I hope everyone will learn, and I'm sure everyone will be on their toes and on their seats now with this very interesting topic. Good afternoon again, once again, and have a good afternoon listening.
Thank you, Mr. Esteban. For today's event, we will be tackling social movements in Southeast Asia, in particular the social movements in Indonesia and Thailand. As you can hear in the news and probably see reports in the social media, there have been series of social movements in the aforementioned countries. One with Thailand, who held days of protests in the street as a sign of dissatisfaction towards their government and to the monarchy. And second, with Indonesia, who are expressing their dissent towards the newly ratified labor law. To help us understand this phenomenon, we will be joined by two of the faculty members of the International Studies Department whose field of interest is in Southeast Asia. Everyone, let us all welcome Mr. Wayne Winter Hao Oiseko and Mr. Nathan Daniel Season. Sirs, welcome to this Kapihan and thank you for coming with us today. Let's get straight to the point. No? I've been mentioning social movements several times already since this is the topic of focus. But can you help us understand what is social movement and why is it happening? Sir Wayne?
Yeah. Actually, a social movement is a loosely organized effort by a certain group of people to achieve a particular goal, typically a social or a political one. And this usually can be carried out or probably to resist or to undo a certain social change. In fact, social movements are organizational structures and strategies that may empower oppressed populations to mount effective challenges and resist the more powerful and advantaged elites. So they represent a method of social change from the bottom all the way to the top. So it is a type of group action and may involve individuals, organizations, or probably both. Uh, there are also certain features that would make up a social movement. So there are actually four, according to certain scholars. So these would be, well, number one, its life is not certain. It may continue for a long period of time or it may die out real quick. Number two is that its aim is to bring out or to resist a change in society. And number three, bring it may be peaceful or violent. And of course, number four, it is an effort by a group, like what I said a while ago. And usually you would see social movements in certain stages. There are actually four stages. Well, some claim that it's five, but in general, there are accepted four stages in terms of social movement. So, of course, the first one is emergence. So, this is the time when social groups would be coming out of the comforts of their homes and to take to the street, to take into social media, and so on. Coalescence is the second one. And in this stage, it is also known as the popular stage. It gathers more and more people and more support from a lot of voices. Number three is when bureaucratization happens or formalization. So there would be certain people who would be picked or who would be chosen as leaders. And of course, number four, eventually it's going to decline. The decline with which a social movement could decline, it could be through repression, co-optation, or collaboration with the oppressor, success, failure, or unable to develop or probably adapt with the certain social changes in society, and of course, establishments with the mainstream. So this no longer, or basically, when it established itself with the mainstream, there is no longer a need for social movements. Okay, probably Nathan would also have something to say about social movements.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think that background was already very comprehensive. But maybe just to add, we can see, and of course, with the cases that are being presented today, that Southeast Asia as a region has a lot of social movements that has happened in the past and even up to this day. And it is to the understanding that the region has a lot of vibrant civil societies, despite the historical developments that have happened. And of course, I think it's very normal for countries or nations in this region to experience such a way simply
Mm-mm.
because there are a lot of suppressions that had happened. And of course, the goal naman or the aim always of any social movement is to have a change in the current establishment, in the current situation that the people are in, be it in economic or political or cultural changes that they want. And we have to understand that societies in Southeast Asia are fragmented. Differences in terms maybe of regional language, for example, or economic status of the people, or even religion in one nation, diba? It's very multicultural. So these things really do happen, no? Hindi naman uh, hindi agad nakakapagkaisang isang bayan o ang isang nasyon. So there are changes that do happen, and kaya ganun na lang ka-vibrant ang social changes dito sa ating region. And later on, we're gonna discuss what is happening in Thailand and Indonesia.
Okay, so what do you think are the elements, or since you've mentioned earlier about the Southeast Asia, what do you think are the elements or factors that make up the existing social movements in Southeast Asia? Who'd like to go first?
Mhm.
Sir Nathan, probably. Sir? Yeah.
Okay, well, there are a lot of factors, no? Like economic factor for one. In the case of Indonesia, I think the differences in the understanding of how to go about their country's economy is somehow the root of it. With Dodo wanting to open up their economy to foreigners, foreign investment,
So,
and gain more business, no? Whereas obviously the people are quite frustrated by the move, and they felt that this would hamper or affect their lives, and it will lower down their wages, lessen their labor rights, etc. However, as
Mm-mm.
you go deeper to the issue, you would realize that it's only at first glance that it's economic factor, whereas it's really more of the political. And I'll explain that more as we go dive into Indonesia's case later. For Thailand naman, there are many factors too, but we can center it more on social rights. I think people wanting to I- people who had been very frustrated with the system that has been put in place since then. The changes, well, Thailand has endured many changes, no, from the 1932 transition from absolute monarchy to a constitutional monarchy. And then amidst all of those things that are happening, the backdrop of a lot of coup d'etats,
Mm-mm.
successful coup d'etats, no, the only country I think in the world that had a lot of coup d'etats.
Mm-mm.
And So it's that political factor also plays a key role. But what is interesting in these social movements, so the factor siguro of COVID-19, I think when people are being, most scholars now, I've been watching the news and I've been following the news. They always go to the political, the cultural, pero I think there's something that has happened, no, with the way people communicate. And COVID
Mm-mm.
19 plays a very important role simply because people are isolated, they are inside in their homes, and however, their communication process doesn't stop. No, they can
Mm-mm.
continue communicating through their mobile devices. And Thailand being one of the countries that has a best connection, 5G na sila, no, napag-iiwanan tayo dito.
Mm-mm.
And it's easy for them to mobilize the movement and to feed in the frustrations. And yeah, I'll also explain later when we go to the specific cases where are the roots of the frustration.
Mm-mm. Okay, what about you, Sir Wayne? What do you think are the elements or factors aside from what Sir Nathan mentioned a while ago?
Okay.
Uh,
Well, when we talk about Southeast Asia, well, the region has been characterized by rapid economic growth and enduring social-political disruptions. After the Second World War, many independent movements in the region ended up in, or probably were replaced by, authoritarian regimes. And because of these authoritarian regimes, people would want to have some sort of freedom that they would wish, or that they were clamoring for, even when they were colonies, with the exception of Thailand, of course. And in the past few decades,
mm-mm.
mass protests have led to the fall of some of these authoritarian regimes, including that of the Philippines, as you know, and of course, Indonesia. Social movements and these collective activism have played a crucial role in these upheavals or social concerns. The region has also seen an emergence in various forms of collective action and social activism, ranging from small scale mobilization to mass movements concerned with social justice, political and democratic freedom, gender, even identities, minorities, and even issues about the environment, as well as civic, ethnic, and indigenous, and even human rights. The history of social movements in Southeast Asia is very much deeply connected with the struggle for social change. And like what Nathan mentioned a while ago, in contemporary times, the social media is a very active platform wherein people would be calling out administrations or calling out problems or concerns in society. And this is also one of the ways in which social movements have been mobilizing. Like in Indonesia, it's going to be through WhatsApp. Sa
Mm-mm.
Thailand, it's more online. So may mga
Mm-mm.
kanya-kanya silang ginagamit na mga social media applications that they would be connected with one another. And at the same time, they would also try to look for ways in which the government would not be able to infiltrate these chat rooms. Kasi for example, in the case of Thailand, the government would have some sort of control when it comes to telecommunications, which is why in recent days, when a particular pornographic site was put down, people were clamoring and was calling this as some sort of censorship and as a move for the government of Thailand to crack down these protesters. Mm-mm. So probably those would be some elements that I see, or that would be common in Southeast Asian countries.
Okay. Can we go specific on Thailand? No? Can you tell us, Sir Nathan, the historical development of social movements in Thailand? So you've mentioned a while ago, I think that Thailand has had a lot of coup d'etat what how can you make sense of it, sir?
Yeah, it's very interesting because it's a country where I lived for 3 years. And even before going there, I've heard that the lead, of course, the prime minister back then was Prayut Chan-o-cha, who is a military man and is under a junta. And until today, who is democratically elected kuno. However, people would feel that because Thailand is still a country na with a lot of tourism and life goes on, hindi mo mafe-feel that they are being led by a military man or a junta, or hindi mo nga mafe-feel na they are under a coup d'etat. Let me tell you why is it the case. No? Because actually, the Thai military plays a very central role in Thai politics, and it's with the help also of the monarchy. And at the same time, in order for the monarchy to survive, also the military is being utilized or used. So they are an interplay of the two. And of course, at the middle of that are the Thai people. Well, when we go back to history, another again the major changes that we have seen in Thai politics really or the Thai political landscape happened in 1932 when finally the Thai people really decided to change their absolute monarchy system into a constitutional monarchy where people are more involved in their politics. But that is not necessarily the case. It's not really the people who became involved after the 1932 naman. It's more on the technocrats. And by the way, why did it happen ba? So in the early 1900s, during the post-war of the First World War, at the backdrop of the 1919 post-war economic crisis and at the same time the 1929 Great Depression, people are demanding a lot from the monarchy. And of course, since they had in absolute monarchy system, they expect everything to be given by their king. And at that time, it was Prajadipok who was leading or being the who is the monarch at that time or the king. And it just grew. I mean, people are not contented with the way the king was handling its situation. And there was also a time when people who are educated went back to Thailand and decided to open up their party, yung People's Party, yung Kanarat Sadon, no? Composed of different people, the military, composed of a civilian, no? And by the way, one of the civilians there was the founder of my university, Thammasat, si Pridi Banomyong. And then one of the famous military man during that time is Pibon Songkram. These are the people who really led or mobilized movement to oust or not really to oust, to change the system that they have had and put in place. And it was only during that time. And then again, now is the new challenge that is happening. So you can see the ang root cause was economic crisis and then intellectuals trying to get into the picture and trying to change the current system put in place. And that was the historical moment of the movements in Thailand. And again, hindi naman tinanggal totally yung papel ng hari nila. Nandun pa rin yung hari nila, but at the same time, yung military nila ang kumukuha ngayon ng pwesto. Sorry, the movie yung it's the dog na. So yeah.
Sorry, I was
I
muted.
would like.
Yeah, go ahead, sir. Sorry.
Yeah. When we talk about Thailand, kasi like what Nathan said, the history of Thai social movements would actually be very, very, what do you say? It's always in a step of may military dictator and then later on palitan. It's a cycle. It's always the same. And the features that would almost always be present would be the monarch behind such movements or such sticking into power by the military. Like in the 1932 revolution, the Siamese revolution, the call for the modernization of Thailand and the change to a constitutional monarchy was actually voiced by the people. But like what Nathan said, it wasn't really the people who became in charge. It would be the technocrats and the military, particularly by Pibun Songkram. And then later on, kumbaga, paulit-ulit lang siya. And later on, well, this is something na hindi naman na mention pa, no? During the onset of the Indo-Chinese Wars and the communist insurgency in Vietnam, Cambodia, and Laos, Thailand was also afraid that these communist insurgencies would be putting off or would be pushing out power sa Thai government, which is why the Thai government, particularly the monarchy and the military, would be cracking down on these people and hardening the borders sa Thailand. And at the same time, people were also feeling like they were also being, in a way, red tagged to the point that people would be clamoring for democratic movements and to finally end the military dictatorship. But the thing is, it didn't really last long kasi even until today, if you could see, it's always the military and it's always the royal family who would be calling the shots. Even if, let's say, the military was not really necessarily democratically elected into power, it would always be the royal family who would be agreeing or who would be claiming that this is a legitimate government. And that is why it is considered to be accepted already. Kahit na hindi naman talaga siya democratically done. Kasi in a way, the royal family and the military would be supporting one another because they would be getting things from one another as well. Kumbaga, give and take sila. Kaya
Yeah.
ang nangyayari is you know, the people would feel more oppressed, people would feel more out of place, and it's not being democratic
Mm.
anymore, which is why these social movements are always very common in Thai politics. Lagi siyang nauulit kasi every time there's an
Mm.
issue, every time there's a concern, it's always like people would be feeling na, you know, they are not being democratic in doing so. So yun yung lagi nangyayari. And well, probably we will talk more about this later
Mm.
kasi there's some sort of connection to what is
Mm.
happening today. With the yellow shirts or the conservatives and the more progressive young individuals would also um, probably be connected with the red shirts somehow. Mm-mm.
Mm. Okay. What about our neighboring country, Indonesia? Can you explain to us the history of social movements in Indonesia?
Uh,
Because I
sa
think
in,
yeah, yeah. Go ahead, sir.
mm-mm. Yeah, sa Indonesia kasi, I would want to start sa 1908 with the what we call as the Indonesian National Awakening and the pushing for
Mm.
a republic of Indonesia, and people would be pushing for a national mass movement that would be aligned with Islamic Islamic ideals and perspectives, and that is in 1912. Fast forward, when Sukarno was placed into power, the democracy terpimpin or guided democracy was put into power with the idea that nationalism, religion, and communism would be the what do you call this? Would be the cornerstone of what we call as Indonesia. So people really supported this government at that time, and on the same note, it was also during Sukarno's time when the confrontasi against Malaysia was happened. During the
Mm.
confrontasi, the people who would be siding with Sukarno, particularly with the socialists and the communists, would be cracking down on Malaysia because many people are afraid that if Malaysia were to form, there might be some sort of crackdown sa Indonesia as well. Kumbaga, Indonesia was also afraid that it might spill over dun sa kanila na magiging part ng Malaysia or perhaps Sabah being part of Malaysia.
Mm.
Kaya involved din actually yung Philippines dito sa confrontasi na to. And people really supported this
Yeah.
up until the time when, well, during the September 30 movement or Garakan September, Tigapulo, no? There would be mass killings and then the new order, the crackdown of the former communist government. People would now be pushing for a more democratic government without the concept of communism in place. Kaya ang tagal niya naging authoritarian regime, so to speak. When people speak out, kumbaga, at the beginning, people supported this up until the time when, syempre, people already felt like it's not doing us any more good. Much like, or much similar to what happened to us during the martial law era of Marcos, na at the beginning, people really had a positive outlook of
Mm.
Marcos up until the time when na-crackdown talaga yung rights ng mga tao, na apakan yung mga paniniwala, karapatang pagtao, and so on. So these riots, these movements against the regime, the Suharto regime, and the economic collapse due to the Asian financial crisis, vote rigging, so to speak, and even calls for independence by certain states like East Timor, which we now know as Timor-Leste. And even
Mm.
during these riots, meron ding mga anti-Chinese sentiments na pinapatay yung mga Chinese because a lot of supporters by Suharto would feel like the Chinese people would be supporting the Communist Party and would have direct relationship with the Communist Party in China. So yun yung mga nagiging social movements sa Indonesia. It's also quite bloody, and at the same time it has something to do with identity and ideology. Identity of being a part of Indonesia or not being part of Indonesia. You know, the Islamic ideology or the Islamic foothold, the nationalism of what is Indonesia, and even communism, like what I said a while ago. And in contemporary times, just like the Philippines, I would like to say, Indonesia and Philippines would have a lot of things in common, even in politics. In
Mm.
contemporary Indonesian politics, well, it is in a way personality driven, similar to
Mm.
here in the Philippines,
Mm.
and it is shaping the nexus between politics in Indonesia and less formalized movement politics in that country. So free and fair elections have been held since 1999, but the first example of this new type of political activism did not occur before the gubernatorial election in Jakarta noong 2012. This is the time when si Jokowi was elected into the mayorship of Jakarta, and then si Ahok ng kanyang partner, which we know today as Jokowi as the president of Indonesia na. So kumbaga ganun din yung, in a way, medyo similar ang stepping stones ni Jokowi with Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte. Yeah.
Okay. So let's go back again to Thailand. Though. Can you explain to us as well yung current social movement happenings in Thailand? And yeah, it has been in the news lately that Thai protests are indeed happening. No? So are there any connections to the past movements as well as with Indonesia? Yeah, let's go first with you, Sir Nathan.
Yeah, I think the social movement that is happening in Thailand really has something to do with what had happened in the past. I think it's the frustration really of the people. And by the way, the social movement that has happening in Bangkok 2 months ago, a month ago, was led by no other than young people or students. And it has also happened in 1972 during the Tamasat massacre, no? When again, amidst all of these, it's the people who feel that they are being put out of place in Thai politics. No, it's always the military and the monarchy. Now the movement that is happening, the reason why it became so massive, and by the way, it's very difficult to conduct such movement in Thailand, especially if you're trying to go against the monarchy, because they have this law. No, they can be in prison once you say something bad against the monarchy, yung lay majesties law. And even when I was studying there, I was very, ano yun, I keep asking controversial questions to my Thai classmates, and they would often tell me, Nathan, I know the answer, but I cannot tell you what is it. That's how scared they are about saying bad things against their king. And during that time, it was still the late Pumipol Alduyadej, who was also the great king, di ba, of Thailand. What more pa yung nag-change, no, si Vajiralongkorn, whereas what people feel with him is, sige, i-Filipino ko na lang just in case na screen grab nyo at ipadala nyo sa Thailand, no? Kasi babalik pa ako. Tawag dito, ang hindi nafe-feel na hindi ganun ka-royalty yung hari ng Thailand, kasi sinasabi na maraming babae, and then at the same time hindi naman ganun ka-produktibo, hindi siya naging parte ng mga naging programa ng tatay niya during the time when he was a crown prince. So there is a lot of people who really didn't like him in terms of preference. Tapos nung siya na yung pumalit, no, in 2016 dun sa namatay na hari, then people who had always had this contention with the monarchy would actually fuel the fire, no? So the tipping point has been reached already, not only when the late king died, it's really more on also on the disappointment in the election that had happened, kung saan ang na-elect is still a military man, si Prayut Chan-o-cha. Bumaba sa pwesto ng pagiging junta, nag-conduct kuno ng election, pero siya pa rin ang nanalo, and then sinasabi nila it's not really a fair election. So people are really disappointed with that. And I remember some of my Thai classmates, they were very excited with the new future party, forward party ng Thailand, yung Nay Anakot, no? And he's very young technocrat as well, and a business person who I actually saw in the Siam Mall when he was campaigning too. Pero more than the disappointment, I think the tipping point was when an activist had disappeared, no, yung government critic. And ang dami, kahit mga educators, no, mga political scientists who write critically about Thai politics, kinukulong, and then they would go to self-exile. So that's how I think it's that boiling point that has been reached already at this point in time. And they views, again, siguro akala ng government nila, they underestimated because COVID is happening, but then the Thai people was able to go against that, and the movement has really sparked a big rally or protest to the streets, no, yung kanilang frustration dun sa nangyayari, no? Especially when the si Wanchalerm, inaalala ko yung name. Yun yung kumakalat na hashtag na Save Wanchalerm. He's a government critic kasi who has been an exile in Cambodia. And then nung nawala yon, doon na talaga nagpuntahan. It started with Twitter and then sa Line na kinakailangan na they feel very suppressed, so now is the time to speak. And to the point that they demand not only Prayut Chan-o-cha to resign, yung current prime minister, the people also demand changes in the monarchy, the way things are being done. No, yung they say that the current king, si Vajiralongkorn, is trying to pull in all the assets of the country into his own hands. Then they feel it's very unconstitutional, and now they're claiming that there should be a change really with how things are being done, and that they can now criticize and say something against should say something against the monarchy when they see that something is wrong. So yun na yung nangyayari ngayon doon. Is there any connection in the past movement? Yun yung second na question mo. I do think there is. Remember, the people leading the protest are the young people, and they are people when they were born. They are under the time when a civilian was leading, sila Taksin Shinawatra, and then yung Seeing Rock, diba? So I think they wanted that type of leadership finally now, wherein civilian people should be placed in Thai politics, and not only, and Thai politics shouldn't be dominated by the military and of course the monarchy then. And it's about high time. Sinasabi din ng iba kong classmates, I do not want to quote them, na may usap-usapan daw sa Thailand na this could be, but this is far from happening, but they're saying na this a very big change that could happen, ang pinakamalaking pagbabago in Filipino, is ito na daw yung pinakahuling hari nila, si the 10th. May ganun silang paniniwala o pamahiin, but again, I don't have any to say to that kasi hindi ko pa alam kung why they say that. It's more on their cultural belief daw. There is a mark na parang it's either malas or it's bad for the Buddhist yung ika-10, parang ganun yung sinasabi.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would like to add actually yung you mentioned about the Lèse Majesty law. Well, this has been used time and time again to crack down on the critics of the government. Pero what is different in what is happening in Thailand today is that the young people, or many people now in Thailand, no longer quote and unquote respect the king as much as they did before, and there are several reasons for that. We have to remember that the previous king, si Rama the Ninth, or Rama the Ninth, he ruled Thailand for a very, very long time, and he was there during the quote and unquote golden age daw ng Thailand. And because of that, people were used to him as a leader. And we have to remember that as a Thai monarch or as a Thai king, there should be certain elements that you would be having. Kumbaga, this would make you as kumbaga, a worthy ruler or a worthy king, and that would be Buddhism. Yung being a Buddhist, a devout Buddhist, would have something to do with that. Kasi people would look to you as a spiritual and a cultural and a political leader, not just a king. Kumbaga may concept pa din kasi talaga ng religion that plays into the kingship. And which is why with the current king na bago, na hindi nila masyadong nakasalamuha for a long time, because this particular king, si Rama the 10th, would be living most of his time in Germany. Even this year, kaya nga na nagka-COVID na sa Thailand, na most of the time the king is in Germany, na nakikita nila na living a lavish lifestyle. They don't think, or they don't feel like the king really cares for them, or they don't really feel like the king is something like a devout Buddhist then. Kasi just like what Nathan said, he would be having a lot of relationships. In fact, ilang beses siyang kinasal, nagkaroon ng queen, nagkaroon na pinapalitan at tinatanggal sa royal family. So yung mga ganung movements by this particular king made him unappealing to many Thais, and it is quite an open secret. Even before he was king, people really didn't like him anymore. Kasi nga itong kanyang lifestyle na playboy, na medyo magasto, actually not medyo, he is really quote and unquote magastos. And then they actually prefer another princess over this particular prince, now king. Pero of course, with the legal background of Thailand, she cannot be queen or the ruler or the monarch of Thailand kasi it has to be a male figure. So yun yung isa sa pinaka kumbaga, we get stuck with this system and yet we cannot even choose which kind of ruler would be there for us. Kasi they don't feel like this king would be, welcoming them or would be loving them as much as the previous king would be doing. Now, I understand that I may be banned in Thailand for saying these things, but since I am here, technically I can say these things. And at the same time, the king would always pull the strings in the government, kahit na military pa yan, katulad ng sabi ko kanina. And it is also an open secret in Thailand na pagka military yung ruler, pwede siyang
I think Sir Wayne got lost.
Nakat ba si Wayne?
Or
to add, no,
yeah.
I think
go
what
ahead,
Wayne was saying, what Wayne was saying was it's very easy to understand what's happening in Thai politics. No, it's also the dislike. So we can understand now that the dislike for the monarch is really personality driven. Hindi assurance na porket you held the position of being a king that you will gain the same respect from the Thai people. And it's not necessarily the case with what is happening now. However, iba rin kasi yung naging legacy ni King Bhumibol Adulyadej. He focused a lot in developing the countryside of Thailand. Ang focus niya sa agriculture, having irrigations, and even giving a lot of scholarships. No, I was one of those people who was able to get a scholarship from the late king himself who died, no? And right now, I've heard that they're not offering the same scholarship anymore. Nawala na agad din yun. So you can see that there's also this sense of, like itong new king, no, it's very hard to match what his father really did. And again, the way people try to look at the king, no, yung former king was godlike figure. They would have pictures of the king in their houses, even in the wallets. That's how powerful the late king was. And in fact, ngayon, ginagawa na lang siya because it's part of the law, yung kay Vajiralongkorn. But again, there is a huge amount of dislike. And it's an open secret. People really dislike, pero they can say it out loud again because of the law put in place. Sige, Wayne is back.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Well, I would like to add, no, kumbaga, yung like
can you
what
continue,
you said,
Sir Wayne? Yeah, yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, the previous king kasi would be there to support the people, would be showing that he cares, and he would always be active in a lot of social or even cultural practices in the countryside. Pero this particular king is mostly focused on his time as a bachelor, for a long period in his life. In Germany, and this actually paved the way as to why people would be wanting to replace him or to abolish the monarchy. And there are certain demands by the people. Actually, marami siya, no? Pero one of it is to revoke the king's immunity against lawsuit, to revoke the lèse majesty law, to give amnesty to persecuted individuals who said something against the monarch, to separate the personal assets and the royal assets of the king. Kasi ang nangyayari ay mag-isa lang siya. And because isa lang yung personal and royal assets, technically, the king of Thailand owns Thailand. Kaya kumbaga yung pera ng Thailand is technically under the ownership of the king. And kumbaga yung budget na ito, nakikita ng mga tao na nawawaldas for his lavish lifestyle in Germany. So talagang you would understand why people would be so angry with how he would be living his life instead of a life that is a god king, who a leader who is supposed to be a devout Buddhist. He's technically, quote and unquote, the exact opposite of what people want a monarch should be. Hindi ba? Yun. Yeah. They also want to cancel out the propaganda around the king. Yan, yung mga ganyan.
Okay. What about Indonesia? Are there any connections to the past movements of the current movements, sir? Because we've been talking a lot about Thailand, but go.
When it comes to connection sa past sa Indonesia, I cannot see any specific detail that would be similar with that of the past, except for the fact that people would be clamoring behind a certain popular leader.
Mm-mm.
Kumbaga, populist din talaga kasi siya, just like what is happening to us.
In the
Pero
Philippines,
when
yeah.
it comes to the current issue, with the current issue in Indonesia, this so-called omnibus law on job creation or undang-undang Cipta Kerja is something that is very, very controversial because it was passed by the People's Representative Council back in February, sorry, proposed back in February, and then it was immediately passed noong October. Kumbaga, it was quite fast, and at the same time, it was quite general and broad in scope. So kumbaga, if it is something that is big and something that is going to impact a lot of people in different sectors of society, it must be given enough time. Kumbaga, ang nangyari is, nagmukha siyang minadali, and at the same time, you have this pandemic na nandiyan. Kumbaga, instead of solving this pandemic, remember, Indonesia is also one of the hard-hit countries in Southeast Asia when it comes to COVID cases, and yet you would have this particular law na talagang ni-railroad siya or minadali siya. Pero what is this?
Yeah.
What is the purpose of this omnibus law ba? It's actually, well, the aim of it is quite noble. It aims to create jobs and raise foreign and domestic investment by reducing regulatory requirements for business permits and even land acquisition processes. So, kumbaga, cut the red tape.
Yeah.
Pero the thing is, a lot of the clauses or a lot of the excerpts inside this omnibus law, this is 1,035 pages when it was first written. Kaya talagang, ang daming loopholes dyan talaga na pwedeng makita. Pero it was railroaded to be passed real quick. So, people called out this particular law because it harms labor rights. It is harming indigenous land rights. It increases so-called deforestation in Indonesian rainforest. And, the root cause of this would be, dito sa omnibus law on job creation, nire-reduce yung environmental protection. Tinatanggalan ng land rights yung mga tao, yung mga indigenous people in the periphery of Indonesia. And at the same time, when it comes to labor or businesses, for example, if I'm not mistaken, one of the clauses there would be mapabawasan ng benefits yung some of the workers. In fact, the Cipta Kerja favors part-timers kaysa sa mga regular employees. So ang mangyayari is, everybody would be a precariat or someone who is not secure with their jobs. And at the same time, they could easily be, pushed aside if they are no longer needed. Kumbaga, hindi na rin nabibigyan ng severance pay and so on. Yung mga benefits na dapat nabibigay, yung mga benefits na dapat natatanggap ng mga employees, hindi na nila matatanggap kasi nga mas mape-prefer na yung mga part-timers.
Yeah,
so yun yung iba sa mga issue doon. So protesters are concerned that the law could hurt the workers, specifically that it will harm workers by reducing severance pay, cutting mandatory leave, allowing longer work hours para sa kumbaga, it happens to be the rich becomes richer and then the poor becomes poorer with this particular law. So yun talaga yung pinaka-issue dyan na nakikita ng mga tao. Kaya sila talaga talagang nakikipag-argue sila, it becomes bloody at times. Kasi nga, if people would not have enough jobs or would not have a sustainable job, then obviously there is nothing to work out for. Diba? Magkakagulo talaga yan.
Yeah, what's happening in...
I just want to also add...
Go ahead, sir. Yeah, go ahead, Sir Nathan.
Wayne was also explaining about the root causes. I think I'm not really quite familiar with Indonesia historically or deeply. However, to my understanding, I think they should have seen this coming because Jokowi during the campaign in 2019 elections has always been very vocal with foreign direct investments, with opening up in a neoliberal manner the economy of the country, wanting the Chinese to invest in in Indonesia. So again, what I was driving at is it really is in the understanding of how to go about the economy. There would be economists would be pro opening up the country, allowing foreigners to compete. Now the capitalists would be very happy about it. There would be conservatives of like what is happening now who do not want that, no, because of course their rights, individual rights, were to be hampered. I think Jokowi should do something with the domestic policy and how to draw a fine line, because hindi nauunawaan yung kanilang omnibus, and what they're trying to look at really is the initial impact for the individual workers, no, who actually just earn very minimal din naman in such a country like Indonesia. So it has never been different, no. Ito rin, I have this hunch, no, that itong binabato na issue, of course with the signing that has happened, yun na yung turning point. However, I think this is also backed up by the opponents of Jokowi as well, no? Kasi yan na yung binabatong issue sa kanya nung opponent niya sila Subianto during the 2019 election. So it's the tipping point now is the signing of the law. But to my surprise, the big outpour in the streets and the burning of the buildings, the malls, yun yung nakakagulat na inisip ko saan yung tipping point. So I must hunch that there must be a backing up as well of somebody big, no, not only the people who are really doing this, no, but there are also political figures behind what is happening. And again, it's always the same. Even in the Philippines, it's such a case.
Yeah, okay. With this social movement, the current social movement sa Indonesia, I think this is quite similar with the Philippines case, right? The ratification of the labor law amidst the pandemic. I think that what also happened in the Philippines with the anti-terrorism law, uh, and and again this anti-terrorism law that was passed, I think last June or July, no, created dissent from the oppositions and a lot of the majority of the Filipinos, I guess. But what do you think is the distinction between the two? Kung bakit the Indonesia's case caught the international community's attention more than the Philippines case?
Well, I guess, well, sa Indonesia kasi, although they are populist and although they would be supporting Jokowi, uh, they would not be as hardcore as us when it comes to supporting a certain president or a certain leader. Well, if you compare, no, Duterte has a lot more, loving talaga na supporters as compared to Jokowi. Kasi even if Jokowi would have some sort of supporters, it's not as, I'm sorry to say, no, for the lack of the better term, rabid sa pag-attack or sa pag-defend sa particular law or sa particular movement. So in the case of Indonesia, talagang they would think about themselves first. Kasi you also have to remember that Indonesia is a way larger country in terms of size and in terms of people. So it's not only the people in the cities who would be affected here. It's also the people in the rural areas. Of course, these people in the rural areas would very, very much be affected. Kasi if the people in the city would not be able to look for proper jobs, then obviously, mas affected sila. Kasi sila yung nasa periphery eh. Diba? Kumbaga, mas prone sila dun ano na yun eh, sa what do you call this? Sa problems. Sa atin, with the ATL, although the ATL is quite controversial as well, it is only controversial for a group of people who would be calling out the government. Yun yung pinaka-difference kasi. But for the omnibus law in Indonesia, this is everyone. Everyone na nagtatrabaho. Everyone na hindi business owner or hindi business magnate. So you would understand that people would be more affected here.
Yeah. Okay, let's go back to Thailand and Indonesia. Although the current social movements are really different from one another, in your observation, are there any similarities between the movements happening in Thailand and Indonesia? You go ahead, Sir Wayne.
Yung pinaka-gusto ko at pinaka-nakakatuwa na similarity, actually this is not common, it's not just in Southeast Asia, but in the rest of the world. But the thing is, in Southeast Asia, yung sa social media na pagpo-post ng mga tao and yung pagko-call ng mga tao sa pagmo-move ng social movements, it is quite funny and common. For example, in Indonesia, meron silang mga memes na that would be saying na chilaka. Well, technically, chilaka is the law, no? Yung omnibus law. Pero it is a mock-up of the word chalaka, which means woe. Kumbaga, may wordplay sila, tapos yung ginagamit nila yung Shopee to say that the People's Representative Council would be sold at a higher price, ganito, ganyan. And in Thailand, ganun din. Na they would be calling the pro-military conservatives as Salim. Or in Thai, it's a wordplay of Thai na sarim, which is yung dessert, no? Yung pagkain. So parang inaano nila na, for example, no, sa Katsitsart, yung protest nila or yung hashtag nila is Katsitsart University is not does not like this particular dessert na sarim. Meron pa sa Konkan University, sorry for being late. Our posts were deleted by the Salim and so on. Yung mga ganyang wordplay, it's quite funny and common even in the Philippines. Yung mga memes na makikita nyo sa social media, yung when it comes to the Dolomite issue, when it comes to the Manyanita issue and so on. So yan yung I think that is something that is very common in many Southeast Asian movements, and it's something that is quite unique and funny at the same time.
What about you, Sir Nathan?
And also, to add, no, aside from that, it just goes to show that mostly the protests or the movements are being led by young people. No, the reason why they can do all of these memes and witty stuff. No, so yun yung common sa kanilang dalawa. Indonesia students were the ones who tried to start the movements, which, diba, it's about economic and workers' rights. But yet, students are taking a huge lead. Diba? So it's not just the workers who really did it, but also the students. And at the same time, in Thailand also. So makikita natin yung vibrancy in terms of, in the academe, how politically acquainted these people are. And not just, I think these are students who put their words into action and not just through hashtags.
Yeah. Yan yung mga dichotomies dito sa social movements, no? The young and the old, the rich and the poor, the urban and the rural.
The binaries.
The binaries that you could see in society. Even in the Philippines, same siya in many cases.
Yeah. I think if I may add up right now, on the government side, they're using this pandemic as a way of using health protocol as a way to suppress the social movement. But what is really what they call this impressive with Thailand and Indonesia, and even in the Philippines, is that they're really never bothered by the health protocols. So parang crap, sorry for the word, yung COVID, basta like my political rights is important than my health, no? And well, that's one of the common things that they had, that they have or we have, no? And speaking of the Philippines, can you also briefly discuss to us the history of social movements in our country up until the contemporary times? Siguro mga maybe ATL or the Manyanita, or what is the recent the Dolomite issue? Yeah. Who would like to go first? Yeah, go ahead, sir.
Yeah. Well, the Philippines is also rich when it comes to history of social movements. Pero of course, the highlighted one is often the EDSA movement, hindi ba? Kasi this was called by many people as something like as a grand thing. Na we would be kicking out this authoritarian or dictator, and we would want to be democratically electing our leaders. We would want to push for our rights. Pero in many cases, these social movements are similar, hindi ba? It's the same with Indonesia in the sense that the Philippine social movements would be pushing for our social rights, our economic rights, and kicking out a certain dictator and authoritarian. In contemporary Philippines, or this year in particular, it revolves mostly about red tagging, the anti-terror law, the COVID mishandling of the government, and so on. Maybe Nathan has something.
if we're gonna go back to history naman, all along, no, the Filipino people being colonized has always had a lot of movements against their colonizers. There were many revolts down in the Katagalugan, in the Visayas against the Spaniards, and then when the Americans were here, so there were movements as well. And then after
Mm.
that, when our colonizers had left, social movements was really more against the political elite who were given where the colonizers passed on the power for them to control the country. Again, it's all because of economic dissatisfaction and yung mga nakamkam na lupa kailangan ibalik. So ito yung mga madalas na issue na pinaglalaban or the issues that the people are trying to look into in terms of social movement. And of course, the highlighted one was again the EDSA ousting a dictator. However, again, a lot of scholars would even say that even EDSA is not really, it's also politically motivated by political elites, the opponents of the Marcoses.
Mhm.
So I think that's very intriguing for the Philippine case because I'm driving at again an assumption that in the Philippines, no, uh, it is said, no, when I did a report about this in Thailand when I was still studying, the Philippines is a country in Southeast Asia with the most vibrant civil societies,
Mm.
whereas civil societies are the ones who can cause social movement. But a lot of people fail to realize now where is that now, no? Right now, even though it's as vibrant as it seems, it's easy to red tag people, it's easy to
Mm.
shame people with the political affiliations that they are in. And I think we need to be a country where it's okay to be part of a certain group because that's what you believe in. But however, what is lacking is the articulation and the communication. No? Why do you want to belong into the certain group? Ngayon, puro shaming na lang eh. You're a
Mm.
DDS. You're a Dilawan and stuff like that. So I think we
Mm.
have to move forward from that.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I think with the case of Indonesia and Thailand and the Philippines in the contemporary times, I think one common thing that they have is or we have is the use of social media. No, like the Philippines, we are known to be the yung pinaka user when it comes to social media, and then I
Mm.
think from since because of this COVID, we cannot really easily go into the street, so we divert this social movement through social media, no? And I think the common issue here is that in Indonesia and the Philippines, we have this populist leadership, and in Thailand, we have this authoritarian. And with this, with even though we can expressly freely express our opinions or insights through social media, I think the danger here is the cracking down of the oppositions or those dissenters online. No? So like we had cases here in the Philippines as well as in Indonesia, and more importantly or in Thailand where they have really like cyber law when it comes to like not voicing not allowed to voice out their sentiments via the social media. So what do you think is how can we get past to this problem? No, I think that's the also the issue, the sense of security in the cyberspace era.
Yeah, as I was saying, there was this law, nakamute pala ako. There was this law where Tito Soto was trying to push for the government is the key personnel to decide whether what one posts on social media is against the state or not. And I think I find it very uh, controversial simply because what may be right to us in our perspective of freedom of expression, and if the government feels that it's attack against them, then they can actually punish that. No, they're trying to
Mm,
push for such a law. I forgot, I think there's this law, I just forgot the exact law, pero I think hindi naman siya pumasa
mm,
so far. And I think what we can see here is that again, no, this goes for all political students. What is not legitimate for other states or other countries? Remember that people try to hide a certain doings or actions in the branding of legitimacy once it's being passed as a law. But we have to be very critical before a particular law gets passed kasi we know that they have agendas and why they pass such thing. And buti nga hindi nakapasa yung binabanggit ko kanina na batas kasi again, I think it's really unfair that it's the state who gets to decide. Hindi man lang hindi man lang external yung magtitingin, magi-investigate, no? So, yon.
Yeah. Sir Wayne?
Well, yeah. Wait lang.
Kasi wait lang just to add, no, especially for our IS students who are here, ang mahilig tayo mag-brand na, for example, this is legitimate in the US and then we're gonna try to apply it here, no? Madalas ganun lagi yung nangyayari. You look at your own country, you analyze your own country based on what is existing and what is happening and what has been the historical development. That is very important. It's not enough, like for now na in Thailand, the way Thai people try to understand their own country is through the lens of the West kasi they feel na hindi pa pwede. Ito yung dichotomy ng Thai society when it comes to lèse majestés law. It's not okay to insult the king. It's not even okay to criticize or to question whether the budget should go to the king or not. No, it's not okay for Thailand. But of course, ang laging binabato ng mga Western educated na Thais, take a look at United Kingdom, where everybody can have an open society and can speak freely against Queen Elizabeth, whether to continue or not. And bakit sa Thailand we cannot do this? Because again, they're very different. In Thailand, the way they look at their king was a godlike figure and not just a normal citizen with a crown on his head. And those are the things that people fail to realize. And why is it the case ngayon na they're trying to go against the king? Because again, hindi siya very royalty, hindi siya very godly-like in terms of the way he acts. No? So yun lang, I just want to throw it out there to our students, especially the IS, the political students, na it's easy to borrow terms elsewhere.
Yeah.
But again, you have to be very critical with what you borrow from the outside.
Sir Wayne?
Wait lang. I'm sorry kasi my connection is not good because of biglang umulan. Can you repeat the question? Sorry.
Yeah.
Umulan ba dyan sa Taiwan?
How can we solve this problem? Kasi diba, as I've said earlier, yung social media is one of the ways that we can voice out our dissent. But the thing is, the government is cracking down. So parang how can we solve this issue without tampering our like political and civil rights?
Okay. Well, for many people, the attack on social media, or not just social media, even in telecommunications company, just like the ABS-CBN, when it was forced shut by this government, people feel like there is not much to do but to call for change or to call for social movements. Kaya rin naging popular siya. But on the other side of the coin, there would be a group of people who would be very supportive of the government. And most of the time, these would be the same people who would be, quote unquote, tagged as conservatives. Unfortunately, because people are tagged as this one or that one with this ideology, hindi siya napag-uusapan or hindi siya napag-aaralan ng maigi, but rather people would just go out and shame people just because of the things that they believe in. Not just in social media, but also in face-to-face. We see people calling out friendships, cutting people out of their lives just because of differences in opinions. But at the end of the day, these issues are not necessarily about friendships. It's necessarily about what is supposed to be beneficial for society or for everyone, and not just a select group of people. So when these things happen, like the cracking down of social media or telecommunications companies, well, you could just think of it this way. Who are you benefiting, or who is para kanino ba to, or sino bang nagbe-benefit dito? Would it be the people?
Thank you
If
for that,
people
Mr.
cannot.
So Ambassador Laura Del Rosario also wants to directly ask her question. You may now unmute yourself, Ma'am Del Rosario.
Who's that one?
Thanks a lot. Actually, Philip, this is a...
Okay, thank you.
Nawala ako doon. Anyway, well, ang sinasabi ko, well, sa ating kasi, pagka nagkaiba ng opinions, nagkaiba ng ideas, nagka-call out nga tayo, di ba? So, we tend to forget that the issue here is supposed to be what is right for everybody, or what is right for a larger group of people. So when people call out for this omnibus law, when people call out for Mr. This cut out of the powerful in Thailand, the rich and the powerful in Thailand, it's also the same in the Philippines. The reason why social movements happen is not because people would want to make noise or people are complaining. It's because people see a certain problem that people from above cannot see. Kaya nga siya movement from below eh. Kumbaga social change from below, or movement from the people. Which is why I think it is supposed to be in many ways successful. But because the certain elements that we have in social movements, ito rin yung mismo nagiging problem niya, or ito rin yung mismo nagpo-pull down sa kanya. Kasi like what I said a while ago, this is going to be formed by a group. Sometimes within the group meron ding mga factions, or meron ding mga differences in ideologies. Group think kumbaga is not as solid as what we might what we might want it to be. Kasi nga, people would still be different from one another. And at the end of the day, even and this is why a lot of social movements are also not successful. Kasi nakakain siya ng sistema, maybe echoing or mimicking what other people would be saying. Kumbaga, nawawala yung essence or nawawala yung pag-uunawa sa kung ano ba talaga yung pinaglalaban. I would like to cite an example. In social media, in recent months, people will be calling out for academic freeze without really understanding what the situations or what the underpinnings would be in that particular call. So the theory or the text is out there, but the understanding is not that clear to everybody. Kasi nga na-form lang sila or nagiging part lang sila ng group because networks. So actually many scholars would also say this na social movements, particularly in Southeast Asia, are many times unsuccessful because instead of pushing for what is supposed to be right, they're simply pushing just because of networks or just because of what other people in the group would be saying. So meron talagang ganun. Yung mga nababayaran or yung mga we can't get rid of that. Meron talaga nun. May system talaga na ganun. But I'm not saying that all social movements are like that. In fact, social movements are still very essential because this would be the voice of the people. Unfortunately, in contemporary times, in the Philippines, we wouldn't see as much support in social movements kasi nga many people would be, in fact, supporting the government. But it is also important to call out the government or to call out people when they do certain things wrong, di ba? Yun yung hindi natin naiintindihan, particularly the more conservative-leaning individuals. And we cannot blame them for that necessarily, di ba?
Okay. Do you have any, meron pa bang or wala na?
Maybe we can ask the participants or other teachers perhaps.
Okay, for this part, speaking of, for this part, we'd like to hear from our members of the faculty and the audience for their commentary or questions. Do we have questions or commentaries from our audience? Would like, if you would like to ask question, kindly type it in the Zoom chat or click the raise hand button. I think we have one. So this is from Sir Mark Isla. No, he sent it to me privately. So what's the difference between the protests happened in Thailand in the past and the current social upheaval?
The main difference is that people would be.
Yeah. What's the difference between the protests happened in Thailand in the past and the current social upheaval?
The main element that we can see, I think Nathan would agree naman with this one, is that people are now calling for another change in the monarchy system. Kasi this is quite unprecedented. People back in 2010 perhaps would not think of this as possible. Kasi because of the lèse majesté law and because of the reverence to a certain king or the royal family. But this time, because the king is different, this king is quite new, di ba? The social underpinnings or the social background would also be different. So I think that's the main thing here that's different. Pero when it comes to the military, when it comes to certain actions by the royal family, it's most likely the same. Yung figurehead lang talaga yung pinaka naiba in my point of view.
What about you, Sir Nathan?
Yeah. To me, I think what is different is actually before Thai people, by the way, Thai people culturally are very much compromising people to the point that some scholars would even write that Thailand is a land of fake smiles. Kasi diba Thailand is known as the land of smiles. Because they had this in their culture na very resilient and very mapag-compromise hanggat kakayanin. But what is different now, no, in the new current upheaval is really they want change. They want change in the system, an unprecedented change that has never been called for before. So that's really one of the biggest difference. Hindi na siya kompromiso, no? Dati nag-compromise pa eh. O sige, let's have after ng kudeta, pag-aralan natin yung constitution, they weren't happy with the 2016 constitution, to be honest, no? Nagkaroon ng botohan noon sa tabi-tabi ng ng Thailand na ito yung magiging constitution natin. They weren't happy with the turnouts, no? Tas mabilis lang, I think it was only a 2-day constitutional change whether Thailand would accept the new constitution, wherein gawa rin naman ng mga military man yon. So it's really to secure their power amongst themselves. So they compromised, they allowed it, and that also paved the way for Prayut to be democratically elected. Again, I always do that, no, because some people feel na hindi naman talaga the new Future Forward Party was really cheated daw, no. So yun yung changes, I think. It's not the time for them to compromise anymore.
Okay, we have a question from Bernard Garcia. With all these social movements, ASEAN's purpose is being challenged, especially in the APSC pillar on maintaining peace and security. What can ASEAN do given that the body acts in consensus?
Can I go first?
Yeah, go ahead, sir.
ASEAN's strength is also ASEAN's weakness in the sense that when we talk about ASEAN, we have this so-called Mushawara Mufakat, or what we call as consensus and deliberation. It basically means that if we are to speak about something, everybody must agree. If one party or if one state will not agree, then it will not push through. Now, in case of domestic issues, obviously, walang magagawa, or there's nothing that ASEAN can do. The only reason why it could be a strength is because, ASEAN can come up with a solid answer. If yes talaga. But the thing is, because this is a domestic issue, ASEAN cannot do anything about it. And ASEAN would refrain from doing or stating anything about it. Kasi, for example, the issue in Thailand, well, of course, Cambodians would not say anything about it. Well, syempre meron silang business deals with the Thai government. So the Cambodians and the Laos would not be siding with the people. They would be siding with the government. Much like with what is happening in Indonesia. Kasi konektado yan eh. Even with Malaysia, in fact. Kasi the current military junta in Thailand, meron din silang what you call this connection dun sa Malaysia scandal, political scandal. And because of that, of course, Malaysians or the Malaysian government would not side with the people of Thailand. So kumbaga, you would see here the powerful and the rich in different states would still be the powerful and the rich. Sila pa din ang nagtutulungan talaga. And if you take a look at ASEAN, sino ba nagahawak niyan? Of course, it would still be the elite, or it would still be the rich and the powerful, di ba? So in my take, I don't think ASEAN can do anything about it. And even if they can do something about it, they won't do anything about it.
Sir Nathan?
Yeah, I answered in my exam before during my graduate studies, and I share this with all of my students, no, especially when I handle Southeast Asia. Sinagot ko doon sa sagot, and I got a high score, but it's a controversial answer. Sabi ko, ang ASEAN, it's an organization na naghahawak-hawak kamay lang naman, photo op lang yan. Simply because, again, yung binanggit na ni Wayne na weakness, no, if you want to drive change, then you need everybody to be in it. However, not everybody's gonna be in it because they have their own self-interest, no? So I'm not saying that there's
Yeah.
no use, no, for the ASEAN security policy, no. Of course,
Political
they do
security.
handle regional uh, regional political security as an ASEAN. But even the South China Sea nga, hindi nila, I mean, we cannot even do something about the South China Sea even, di ba? Because different countries have different things at stake, no? Cambodia or is leaning more towards China and so on. No? So hindi siya, again, like what Wayne said, really nothing, it cannot do anything yet.
Yeah. We have another question in the chat from Diane Mortera. Is red tagging also observed in other Southeast Asian countries? How does this affect the emergence and effectiveness of social movements in these countries as well as the Philippines?
Um, Red tagging is something that is not common in some ASEAN countries, particularly Vietnam, because Vietnam is a socialist state. So obviously, red tagging is not a thing there. But in fact, it is encouraged by the state. Because of course, the state would be headed by the Socialist Party of Vietnam. So I think it is something that is unique in the Philippines, for example. I think in Indonesia, it has also been a trend kasi na may red tagging for a time. Kasi nga, when the leadership changed, no, from the pro-communist side to the non-communist side, even until today, di ba na merong, like what I said a while ago, na may mga anti-Chinese sentiments, anti-communist sentiments. It also happened to a certain degree in Indonesia. It also happened to a certain degree in Thailand, particularly during the time when the Indo-Chinese wars happened. Pero in contemporary times, it's not a big deal, or it's not that big of a deal or an issue in these countries because they have other issues to look out for. In the case of Thailand, they are looking out for the issue regarding the monarchy. Sa Indonesia, they are looking for issues that is related to this one, for example, yung omnibus law, yung populism versus the more progressive individuals. Meron pa tayong religious identities na tinitignan, may regional identities pa, and so on. So I don't think red tagging is as much as an issue in other Southeast Asian countries as in the Philippines.
Okay, what about you, Sir Nathan?
Yeah, I agree with what Wayne said. Like even in Thailand, siguro yung red shirt lang kung maitatag sila, but not necessarily in context the same as in the Philippines na red tagging as in communist leaning. Not really. Like I think mas vibrant in terms of ideology, very vibrant like in Thailand, 'di ba? Kitang-kita the yellows would be very much supportive of the monarchy. They're gonna be very much conservative, whereas the reds were and not in the context again of red tagging as in communist leaning. They're more open to societal change, more accepting of new changes, and not really leaning towards the monarchy. So they have their different brandings over there. So it's not really necessarily applying the same context there. So wala po masyado. In a way, of like, Thailand. Okay. And again, nabanggit na ni Wayne yung sa Vietnam and other countries.
In a way, like what many Southeast Asians would be saying, para tayong same, di ba?
But different.
Same and similar, but it's technically different, di ba? So probably that's it. Even when the concept of democracy, pag sinabing democracy, people would be saying na ito yun. Pero if you go to Vietnam, they would be saying that they are also democratic, but
iba
yung dating, syempre. Iba yung explanation nila, Dad.
Yeah. I think we have comment from Sir Francis. Maybe Sir Francis can unmute his mic.
Yes, hello. Yes, good afternoon. This is a very interesting topic indeed, that what we're having now, what we're discussing. It's very relevant, and it's actually very timely dahil as we speak, the protests, I think, the protests both in the Thailand and Indonesia are still still ongoing. Ngayon, just some few observations that I had. I mean, in what you guys talked, or in what you guys said a while ago, most of these movements are actually led by student leaders, no? by youth, by the youth. No? Well, actually, I don't know. I just want to hear your side. Why is it, or why do you think that in these countries, in Thailand and Indonesia, for that matter, we can see that there's a youth-led initiative to really mobilize. However, as you said a while ago, similar din naman dito sa Pilipinas na meron ding mga memes, no? Kita naman natin yung memes ng mga the youth, no? Including us. I mean, I'd like to consider ourselves, no, still part of the youth, no? So including us, we do still share memes about that. But what do you think are the challenges? What do you think are the obstacles that hampers mobilization, that hampers a consistent mobilization that we can genuinely say that it's really led by or organized by this or by the youth, no? And second observation and comment that I would want to ask you guys is Samuel Huntington wrote this waves of democratization. You know? I think the last that he wrote was about the third wave of democratization. Are we actually seeing another? I mean, what do you think? Are we actually seeing another wave of democratization, not only in Southeast Asia, but rather in the context of East Asia itself, as we see the movements as well in Hong Kong, for that matter? What are your thoughts about this? And lastly, will we see a spillover effect here in our country, or do you think it's far from possible, since there's a lot of factors, mainly geography, for that matter? Thank you.
Sige, I'll go
Sagutin
first
ko yung
dun
second
sa,
part ng question.
Sige, I'll go to the first question then. I think in terms of what hampers mobilization, why is it that even the Philippines is known for having such a vibrant civil society daw, pero wala tayo nakikita na masyadong student-led? I think it has to go with opportunities, extension of opportunities to people. Most of our youngsters, they see that they have opportunities elsewhere, and it's a sad reality. Most of our good intellectuals who has lost hope in the country, instead of them undergoing movements here, they would rather go elsewhere and start a new life in another country. May movement tayo nakakakilos ng Filipino, maybe because we speak the global language, whereas the Thai people, they cannot do that, and they're inward looking as much as possible. If they can fix what is inside, and they know that they are the hope of their country, they would do a certain change. And that goes for Indonesia as well. Kaya nga may phenomenon din sa Philippines na brain drain. Nawawala sa atin yung mga yung mga dapat na inaasahan na magkukos ng movement. And then also the political system. We also give a lot of opportunity to our youngsters to take lead already in our government. Yung SK, we have that in our system. And because of that being put in place, majority of the people na inaasahan natin magkukos ng pagbabago, they wouldn't do such pagbabago. And in fact, corruption starts as early sa mga SK. When you try to look at different studies na pinapublish ng UP, yung laki ng corruption sa SK, I didn't know that it's a lot, no? So nakikita natin na may iba tayong istruktura kung bakit ibig sabihin, maraming ibang pinupuntahan itong mga inaasahan natin sana magkukos ng pagbabago. And by the way, student leaders then in our country, no, are not really geared towards university management, na hindi sila pwede na makilahok sa mga political movements. Totoo yan, no? I would vouch for that. I mean, in the Philippines, we can speak freely naman, di ba? Hindi talaga pinapayagan na makipagdialogo ang mga student leaders natin with other political organizations kasi they feel na ito mape-penetrate yung and then the university doesn't want to do anything with political issues and stuff like that. But I think it's ironic kasi we claim to be, or scholars from the outside, when they look at the Philippines, sinasabi nila na vibrant civil society, they can do this, they can do that. No, we cannot. And that's a sad reality about it. So I guess yun. And again, we cannot blame our people, our youngsters, to be politically apathetic. And I don't want to call them politically apathetic. I think they have other things to focus on, siguro. So that could have been also another reason for that.
Well, just to butt in very short, Nathan. I mean, the very reason that we're holding this kind of activities, the very reason that we're holding such activities is that, of course, in a way, we do our part so that our students would not be, as you mentioned, politically apathetic. But nevertheless, I think what you've said do have merits on them. So yeah, thank you. And I think Wayne has another answer for the questions that I asked.
For the first question, I would want to be blunt about it. It's many times because a lot of old people, I'm sorry, a lot of old people would be blocking or would be hampering how people would be thinking or how people would be mobilizing or moving. Just take a look at our students, for example. Whenever a certain student would want to push for a certain project, I'm not saying anybody, but certain groups, particularly from the administration or probably from the school, might not agree with what the student would want.
Mm.
So hinaharangan na agad without even giving the student the chance to, to do what they want or what they think is necessary for them to develop themselves. So kumbaga, because of this, what I call as school censorship or administration censorship or whatever, kung sino man yung nagkaharang dyan, we would want students to be proactive. We would want students to say more things. But when they do say things, hinaharangan din natin sila.
Mm-mm.
So parang, we are our own problem in that case or in that sense. Di ba gusto mo magsalita sila pero pag nagsalita sila, sabihin mo mali sila. Di ba? So we would understand na bakit ganito sila mag-isip or bakit ganito hindi gumagalaw yung ibang students. And at the same time, like what you said a while ago, yung opportunities kulang sa ibang students. They would rather look for food or they would rather look for a job or to feed their family as compared to, be involved in political matters. So mas nauuna yung pangangailangan ng katawan kaysa yung pangangailangan ng lipunan. So maraming beses na nangyayari yung ganun, particularly in state universities. Di ba, before the big or the stronghold of these social movements would often come from the state universities and U-Belt. Pero ngayon, kung titingnan mo yung U-Belt, pasosyalan na, may mga ganong ano na siya. May notion away from what has been used to. And kumbaga nawawala yung sense of reality, nawawala, na-disconnect yung social reality sa mga pananaw ng mga kabataan natin ngayon. And that is, for me, I think, is quite sad. Pero to answer your second and third question, yung second, yung third wave of democratization, it is too early to tell that there is some sort of next wave for democratization. But at the same time, pwede rin natin sabihin na nandyan na siya. And it has always been there. It's just that medyo maliit lang yung nga stuck sa bahay. And ilang buwan tayo nakakita ng mga problems na nag-unfold sa TV natin, sa radio natin, sa mga news information. And because of that, it feeds to our anger, it feeds to our calls for whatever democratic movements. Pero I would say na it might be too early, and at the same time, it's not yet too formal. Pero yung spillover, pwede na hindi. I'm not really so sure, no? This is my take lang. Pwede na hindi. Pwede in the sense na people might be inspired with what is happening in Thailand or Indonesia, but people might also be afraid of what is happening in Indonesia and Thailand. For example, since we are seeing that there would be bloody movements in Thailand and Indonesia, maybe people would not go out to the streets kasi nga natatakot na lang na baka makulong, mapatay or whatever. So it goes both ways. It could be lakasan natin yung loob natin or matatakot tayo na to say that this is what we are fighting for. Pero going back to what I said, how can we push for something that we believe in if there would also be the same people who would say na hindi tama yung ginagawa natin? Diba? Lagi may ganung factor eh. We always have to think about the psyche of the different people that are around us. With this generation, no, the younger generation, we are very much influenced by the people we see on social media or on the internet. And mabilis tayo maging emotional with a lot of things. Pero it does not necessarily mean that we would do something about it. Diba? Well, that could be up for debate naman.
Yeah, Bart.
Yeah, I think this. Yeah, yes. Go ahead, sir.
Can I make a comment?
May add din ako dun sa spillover.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. One, I think when we talk about students not having an opportunity to be parang politically aware in the university. But I think the idea is the university doesn't really prevent students to think of political, issues in the country. Okay, although they might be kind of they might intervene in like whatever activities that students will organize, especially if the activities are inside the university. Where the idea there is the university still encourage and promote, critical thinking, specifically when you talk about, these political issues. What the university really wanted to have is the idea that we want the students to discern for themselves, diba? The idea, the things that are happening in our society. Because if you're going to ask me, like my question a while ago, is censorship absent in countries like Thailand and also Indonesia? When you talk about the context of universities, but of course we also have to look into that in details, diba? But the students outside the university organized these activities, the protests, diba? The group of people, specifically in Thailand, they organized this protest, perhaps out of their frustration to the current system that they have, right? The reason why I asked a while ago the difference between the social movement that happened in the past and the social upheaval that are currently happening is the fact that in the past there is yung tinatawag natin na red and yellow shirts, right? The red ones are the supporters of the former Prime Minister Thaksin Shinawatra and and his sister, right?
Thaksin.
And yes, Thaksin Shinawatra and another the
Yingluck.
sister, right? Yingluck, right? And then
Yingluck.
the yellow shirts are the supporters of the royal family, right? But now the reality is different because the students or the youth that are protesting is not just about the factions within the society, the rich and the poor, but it's more about the discontent in the current system, discontent in the government, because we all know that Thailand has this history of coup, the military coup, and most of the time the military coup are somehow overthrown by civil society movements, right? Because of course with the backing of the royal family or the king. So nowadays kasi, as you mentioned, diba, the social movement is somehow a product of their criticism against the system of government that they have and also the behavior of the current king. So that's the idea that I wanted to share this afternoon.
Good.
Would you like to respond, sir? Sir Nathan, Sir Wayne?
Wala. Ako wala.
Kebart, can I
Ako wala.
just...
I totally agree with Sir Mark.
I think we have like from Sir Kiko. Go ahead, sir.
I just want to add something on what Sir Mark said with how the students or with the students leading leading movements. I think it's not really the factor that there's a censorship within the university, but rather on also the mindset that of what generally Filipinos view universities. We tend to view universities as knowledge consumptions, or we go to universities to consume knowledge so that we can be part of the labor force after, di ba? Ang common na conception ng magulang ay papaaralin kita ng kolehiyo, anak, para pagkatapos mo ng kolehiyo makapagtrabaho ka, makakuha ka ng magandang trabaho, makakuha ka ng magandang buhay after. But the idea that university is also a center for knowledge production is, I think, still a thing that we have to see to happen, or we still get to see to happen here in the Philippines. And I think that's one of the reasons why we rarely hindi ganun ka-consistent yung nakikita nating movements led by students, because the mindset on the onset, they enter university not to consume knowledge, to consume the knowledge so that they can be part of that labor force, that rather than to actually produce knowledge. And that's why I think activities such as this, where we do really encourage students to discern and to think critically, is at least a stepping stone, or at least ways on how we could promote such thinking, or such mindset for our students as well. So ayun lang po, and thank you.
Just to add, sorry.
Thank you, sir. Go ahead, sir.
Very short one, sorry. I just wanted to add, we conducted a study before about political socialization, and because the idea there, if you wanted to know why the students are always somehow attracted to political protests, that was like 2005, 2006, something like that. But the idea there is political scientists thought that political socialization can be achieved through several factors, right? Like in the context of education, you have the faculty members discussing issues and discussing political events, okay, that's happening in their country, and also at the same time, the curriculum, which also influences the ideas that are being taught to the students. So somehow that's the idea of, you know, making students more politically aware of what's happening in their society, I mean in the country. Okay, so as a support to the idea presented by Francis, the idea such as this would really contribute to opening the minds of the students about what's really happening in the country. Okay, it goes beyond, let's say, it goes beyond the idea of censorship within the university, because an institution cannot really control the information that can be consumed by the public and the students and the youth, especially nowadays that we have social media where they can access all the information. Okay.
Yeah, meron pa po ba? Okay, I think we need to wrap up, but we have two remaining questions. Events proceed with domestic politics amidst issues such as the PhilHealth scandal when compared with Southeast Asian states that are also dissatisfied with their governments. Who would like to answer first po?
Hello. Probably isa-isa lang siguro. May isa-isa lang siguro kasi dalawa yung question Yeah. So, let's answer the first one muna. Yung what do you think can we learn from our neighboring countries in terms of engaging to an active civil society? Well, there are many unique elements in different countries, pero probably what we can learn from neighboring countries is that they, well, like what Sir Mark and Sir Kiko would say, discern muna before we could do things. But it's also the same concern that I raised a while ago, that there would be certain times that social movements would not be as pure as the goals would be, or not as clear. Kasi nga, many times social movements are also informal, and at the same time social movements can also be magulo. Wala silang masyadong clear na gustong pinaglalaban, and because of that, medyo nag-fail talaga sa atin. And that would also add to the concern nila Sir Mark na the reason why some ideas might be, checked or double checked is because hindi nga formulated or hindi nga buo yung arguments ng mga ito. Pero siguro what we can learn from other Southeast Asian countries is that mas ma-discern natin o mas maigi. Pero I still think na although we can discern or we can look into certain problems, we are also hampered by the same problems that are present, diba? Like poverty, of course. I'm not saying that Thailand doesn't have poverty rates, but many of Thai university students would actually be more well off than Filipino students.
Yeah.
At saka I think it's also about learning of what we want as people when we go join these social movements. Like in the case of what is happening in Thailand, the way they conduct their movement is very sophisticated to the point that it has been communicated through the various media, social medias, by the way, not the traditional media, of their demands, no, of what they want in these movements that they are joining with. So I think that's something also that we can learn because majority, I'm not saying na hindi masyadong politically aware ang mga Filipino students, pero what I'm saying is that in their case, before they join the bandwagon, they really know what they wanted because it has been communicated effectively through the means that they have. And I think that's very important for us here. Kanina din, I just want to also add about the spillover dito sa atin, mga nangyayari in terms of inspiration. I don't think that Thailand and Indonesia is a very inspiring case for the Philippines because the ASEAN spirit for Filipinos is not as high compared to those other countries that I've mentioned. Whereas kapag cancel Korea ang issue because of popular culture about Korea, mas acquainted ang mga Filipinos to join the conversation in that issue. Iba yung appeal ng Korean case compared dun sa Thai case and then Indonesian case. So I think in terms of spillover, maybe not necessarily. It may hit their social medias, but again, dadaan lang yan, no? But again, I may be wrong about it. So I think yon.
Yeah.
What about the second question? Sorry.
Well, before we to the second question, I would like to add yun sa sinabi ni Nathan. Aside from that, hindi rin kasi masyadong napag-uusapan or nakikita sa news natin yung issues na nangyayari sa Thailand and Indonesia, which is why I think yung mga talk na katulad ng ganito is very, very important because these are our neighbors and their concerns are in many ways same with our concerns. So, yun, that is also something that we could probably watch out for kasi hindi natin sila napapansin. Pero kung tutuusin, dapat natin silang pinapansin. Kasi we live in one region. And that is also quite unfortunate to say kasi many Filipinos are even unaware as to how people in other countries in Southeast Asia would be living their lives. Diba? The problems of a Vietnamese might be very, very similar to the problems of an ordinary Filipino. Pero we don't know much about the Vietnamese because we don't study them. Diba? We only study them in the university level and in small courses like IS or in AS. The other students wouldn't really know anything about it. Sa Thailand, for example, elementary level pa lang, itinuturo na yung ASEAN. Meron na silang mga awareness programs such as ASEAN Day for each week. For example, may Wednesday na naka-ASEAN uniform sila.
Yes, totoo yan.
Diba? Pero dito sa atin, if you talk to an ordinary Filipino about ASEAN, they don't know anything about it other than the traffic that the ASEAN meeting would cause. Hindi ba? Many people are, diba? Many people are disconnected with that reality. That these are our neighbors and we are supposed to be involved or aware at least as what are the things that are happening in these areas. So that is probably one thing that we can learn from them to care about others. Diba? Yung second question, Sir Kev?
Yeah. How should Filipinos that are dissatisfied with current events proceed with domestic politics amidst issues such as the PhilHealth scandal when compared with Southeast Asian states that are also dissatisfied with their governments?
Well, I don't think that there is a single correct answer for this one. And I also don't want to say na, magrevolusyon tayo because I don't want to be tagged as such. And, diba? May of course, may fears tayo about that. And of course, that is not necessarily 100% I would be agreeing upon. So I don't think there is a single solution or there is a single correct answer for that question.
Mm-mm.
Yeah. And then I think dialogue is very important in our capacity of what we can do. Maybe it's high time to discuss, be it in a student level inside the classroom, to discuss about these things. I think that's one step ahead already. What can we do about our dissatisfaction with PhilHealth? And then maybe you can course through a nice, ang dami namang, maraming opinion ng mga Filipino. You can see it sa comment section naman sa mga news articles, 'di ba? Kaya lang sala sa init, sala sa lamig, ganun yung sasabihin, 'di ba? Tapos political shaming, trying to associate people with certain parties that they don't belong to, tas ire-red tag pa, yan yung mga I think that has to stop, no? We shouldn't oppress these people to speak out what they think should happen, or either their suggestions. And again, the way to go about PhilHealth naman, there's no one-way solution as well. What might be a good solution for you may not be for another. Pero it's about time that we have a dialogue about it. Kasi sayang yung ating kalayaang makapagsalita dito sa ating bayan.
Mm-mm. Yeah. So yeah, I think that's all the questions from the audience. As a final point, sirs, in general, what lessons can the Philippines learn from these movements? No, in general, what can we learn as a Filipino from these movements, aside from the active engagement of the civil society, etc.? Yeah,
I think in general there is really hope that things could change. In Thailand, there hasn't been much talks. I think when I had a conversation with my classmates that this particular thing would have happened, naki-question nila yung monarchy. They never thought that they would experience that in their lifetime. But you see, it's happening right now, and people are becoming more and more vocal, critiquing what is happening. So change could happen. It could happen in a span of a month just because of a certain issue, and then a boiling point that it reaches. So I think in general, yun yung ating pwedeng asahan na merong pagbabago. I know in the country, am I right to say this, that a lot of people are silently dissatisfied with the way things are being carried out in terms maybe of the Dolomite scandal, the PhilHealth. There are a lot of issues to focus on in our country. Pero, and then for us, diba, what we look at is, let's just wait for the next election. But to be honest, if you try to look at Philippine politics naman, it's the same people who keep running naman. It's the same consolidation of power. It's the political elites who have held power in this country. And so what to do now? Na wala na tayong pag-asa. So I think what we can learn in general is that there may be a change that may come. No? At yun yung totoong change is really coming.
Sir Wayne?
Sa akin, well, I think, I na-mention ko na to a while ago, and I'll repeat it again na lang. Be informed and be more curious about our surroundings or the people around us, because that's the only thing, or that's the only way that we could improve ourselves. Yun lang.
Yeah. Okay, I think that's all. No, that's it. It's a wrap up. No, thank you, sirs. Thank you, everyone. Today was a fruitful day indeed, and we were able to understand these movements profoundly, the factors, the similarities, and the contrast, and the lessons learned from these movements. No. We would like to thank our faculty members, Sir Wayne Winter Uiseco and Sir Nathan Dania Season, for sharing with us their expertise and time with regard to the topic. We would like to also thank the support of our institute, the Institute of Arts and Sciences and the International Studies Department, headed by Mr. Francis Esteban, for making this Kapihan a possible one. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today, and we will see you next time. Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.